there something else I'm supposed to do? Look at this. My brother. My dad. He's my dad.
I disinherited him, though. He doesn't know that.
I know. That's sad because I keep wearing the same clothes, so he'll make sure I'm on that will.
What are you wearing next?
Yeah, what color are you wearing next week?
Whatever you tell me not to wear, I'll wear. Tell me.
You got to start it, though.
Oh yeah, I gotta do the board.
Yeah, where's your...
Yeah, I got it right here. Yeah, I gotta do the, what do we call it? The Municipal Building Authority. We need a nomination for Secretary Treasurer. I'm gonna nominate Brett. Okay, want to welcome you to our city council meeting this evening. We'll begin the council meeting after we have a meeting of the Municipal Building Authority. I will call that meeting to order now. Our business is to take a nomination for Secretary Treasurer. Do I have a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Council Member Brett Hales.
I'll second.
Well, you guys did that so darn quick.
You don't get to do that. Motioned and seconded. All those in favor?
Wow.
Aye.
Aye. You got that, Jennifer? Okay.
If I would have said no, I would have still had to do it.
I'll take it.
Because majority rules.
Yeah, we got the
didn't have a
railroad
choice.
is running, buddy.
All right, thanks a lot.
We'll
Appreciate
take
ya.
a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Motion to adjourn. Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Okay, motion and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that concludes the Municipal Building Authority. We'll now go to Dale Cox, who's conducting our council meeting.
Okay, I'll bring the council meeting to order. First, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and Daphne will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, good.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, for liberty, justice for all.
Thank you, Daphne. Okay, we'll move on to approval of the council meeting minutes for September 3rd. I'll take a motion if there's no changes.
I'll move that we approve, I'm just looking for the date, sorry. September minutes for September 3rd, 2019 council minute.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to special recognition. Consider a joint resolution of the mayor and municipal council of Murray City, Utah, to designate and support the week of October 16th through October 6th through the 12th, 2019, as Fire Prevention Week. Mayor Camp and Assistant Chief Joey Middleman presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a joint resolution of the Mayor and Municipal Council of Murray City, Utah, to designate and support the week of October 6th through 12th, 2019 as Fire Prevention Week. Whereas the City of Murray is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those in Murray City and acknowledge that fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the location where people are at the greatest risk from fire. And whereas fire departments in the United States responded to 357,000 home fires, resulting in 2,630 deaths in 2017, and most U.S. fire deaths, 4 out of 5, occur at home each year. And Murray residents should identify places in their home where fires can start and eliminate those hazards. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in a home fire by 60%, Murray residents should install smoke alarms in every sleeping room, outside each separate sleeping area, on every level of the home, and assure all batteries are functional. Murray residents should also practice a home fire escape plan to better prepare for a fire emergency. And whereas the Murray City Fire Department is dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and education, and the 2019 Fire Prevention Week theme, "Not Every Hero Wears a Cape. Plan and practice your escape," effectively serves to remind us that we need to take personal steps to increase our safety from fire. Therefore, we do hereby proclaim October 6th through 12th, 2019 as Fire Prevention Week throughout this city, and urge all the people of Murray to be aware of their surroundings, look for available ways out in the event of fire or other emergency, respond when the smoke alarm sounds by exiting the building immediately, and to support the public safety activities of the Murray City Fire Department during Fire Prevention Week 2019. And that's the resolution.
Do we have any comments, any questions? I'll take a motion.
I'll move to approve the joint resolution of the Mayor and Municipal Council of Murray City, Utah, to designate and support the week of October 6th through 12th, 2019 as Fire Prevention Week.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Jennifer?
Aye.
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 Thank you. So I'd like to invite Assistant Chief Joey Middleman to come up. And Chief Harris, did you want to come up as well?
Of course.
And I'd like to present this to both of you chiefs, and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, thank you. There, appreciate it. All right, we'll have Chief, if you'll hold that. First of all, I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to declare this Fire Prevention Week coming up, starting officially on Monday. Actually, I think it starts officially on Sunday. It's the 6th, so it starts on Sunday. We'll all be home relaxing and doing our best. However, starting on Monday, we're going to have some fun stuff planned for the city, and that's what I want to talk to you guys briefly about. And then anybody also watching council meeting, maybe this will help spread the word out for what is to come to play. We have 3 different areas that we reach out to the community for fire prevention. But before I get into that, one thing that I really want to make mention and hit home, last year after Fire Prevention Week, we had something a fire that ended up taking a grandma and a little daughter's life, if you guys remember that. And that was really kind of it was a hard time for, I think, the fire department. It was a hard time for the family. It was a hard time for the school. And so I realized then how important this week is, how important the opportunity is to reach out to the community and the fire prevention that can happen. As the mayor read that report, there's thousands of deaths throughout, and our goal is to reach out. So after that, we partnered up with American Red Cross. And between George, I like calling him Fireman George because everybody knows him as Fireman George. Between him and the crews, they did over 78 smoke alarm installs in different homes throughout. And these were all free of charge. They're done by donations through the Red Cross. They give them to us, and then we're able to install them as we go out on calls. We recognize, that's one of the things when we're in a medical call, we recognize, hey, there's no smoke alarm in here, and then the captain will offer to install them and or refer them to George, and they can reach out to us. So anybody that's listening, if you know you're struggling, whatever it might be, you can't afford that smoke alarm, there's a way to get them. And you're always welcome to contact us in fire prevention. Now, getting to the fun stuff is we have a couple of little handouts for you guys. We reach out to the second graders, and I wish I would have planned this, but this is actually my second grader, Daphne. And so she's going to hand you guys out a pencil and then also a little packet. Can you do that by yourself there? Okay, so I'm going to hand out. Is my voice being recorded, or can I just talk loud? I'm kind of a loud talker. I can hand it out for you. Okay, fair enough. All right, Mayor or Chief. Yeah, I call everybody something else. Yeah.
Freudian slip.
Got it.
Mayor.
No, got it.
That's right.
All right, you can stand. You can go with him. So every second grader, we spend 45 minutes with them in school, and we make it fun because, as you can imagine, a second grader's attention span isn't large, but between our crews and fire prevention, we'll entertain them with the Fireman George's fire alarm. We'll do a little fireman workout. We'll practice an escape drill. And we reach out, and these are done in assemblies anywhere from 60 kids to 120 kids is our largest school. So we have a good time with them. Hopefully at the end they kind of get used to firemen, and they also pick up some safety tips. And we give them this homework assignment. So this is also your guys' homework assignment as you guys are here with your families. And part of that is a smoke detector alarm test once a month throughout the year, making sure that your batteries are good. We always encourage the time of, I'm drawing a blank, daylight savings time for you to change your batteries. But anyhow, we also encourage you to test it. My second one is we're reaching out with the library with Kim, and we'll be there almost every day of the week during preschool reading time at 10:30 throughout the week. And then our final one is we'll reach out in the Senior Recreation Center. We'll be there on Friday if you guys are looking for a fun lunch at 11:45. We'll be talking to those folks. So other than that, thanks again. I love this week. I really appreciate it. It's out of all the paperwork and all the other stuff we do, reaching out and hanging out with kiddos is pretty fun. So it's a little glimpse. So thank you very much.
Chief, Middleman, let me ask a question. So what if people can afford doing that, but they just need help installing where to put them? And is that somewhere
Yes.
online or I mean, that's
So there is stuff online that'll tell you inside of every room in the house, and then outside of like main gathering areas.
where? Okay.
Is also another good, and it should be interconnected depending upon the year of your house.
Okay.
But they can also reach out, and we're happy to filter questions. And my number's on our phone tree that calls into fire prevention of that 2780 number.
Okay.
And so we're happy. I haven't been overwhelmed by phone calls yet. I'd be surprised if this takes you one. So
Thank you for that's a great opportunity for Murray to be able to partake of. So
thanks. Appreciate
Thanks.
it, Councilman Hills.
Thank you.
and thanks Daphne.
And thank Daphne, yep.
I'm glad you moved that mic up so your dad would talk a little clearer into it.
Okay, before we go to citizen comments, I would like to excuse Councilman Brass. He had some surgery. He'll be off for a week or two. I don't know, maybe he'll be back next week, but he had some surgery last week, and all other council members are here. We'll move to citizen comments. Keep your comments to 3 minutes. Jan, if you have a comment, Jan has a form, would ask you to fill out. Be aware that we can't speak on things that aren't on the agenda, but we will listen, and if we can find somebody to answer your questions or get back to you, we will. So is there anybody for citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to public hearings. The first public hearing, consider an ordinance amending section 13-48-050 of the Murray City Municipal Code relating to stormwater utility fees. Danny Astle presenting.
Okay, this is the first time I'm trying this technical stuff, so I usually bring my own equipment, but thank you, Council and Mayor. I appreciate the time this evening. A few weeks back, well, actually 4 weeks ago, we had a visit talking about our stormwater fees, our stormwater rates, and so tonight. What you have before you is the ordinance changing that. So just real quickly, I'd like to go over some of the things that we talked about. And so I just wanted to kind of remind everybody of the background, or for an understanding of what we were doing. The stormwater utilities are authorized under the state, under Utah State Code. And we operate as a separate enterprise fund in the city, and we strive to be self-sufficient, and that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight. We provide specific comprehensive services that benefit the city. We manage the quality and the quantity of the water that is of stormwater that's being discharged according to the NPDES permit that we are under with the state of Utah. Some of the things that we are involved in, obviously, are the construction and maintenance of the actual stormwater facilities. We control flooding and improve the character of the surface runoff. So that's important because the state of Utah is watching the quality of water going into our waterways. We work to implement best management practices, not just with us, but also with the community, especially in businesses. We do water quality sampling, we provide education, and we do outreach programs as part of the stormwater requirements. We look at developments and review the plans that are coming in to make sure that they're going to meet the criteria that we need to meet. The stormwater system, we look at the maintenance of it, and our people do a good job with that. And then we also do project site inspections, and so the projects that are under construction, we need to watch those because that's where a lot of tracking goes and gets into the stormwater that way. And then we look at our detention and retention basins and make sure that they're meeting, they're doing what they're supposed to be. So the approach that we took in our rate review and rate study, of course we reviewed our master plan to understand the levels. Number one, our levels of actual service that we give and our requirements under the permit. We review find our deficiencies, so we develop an actual water model of how our stormwater operates and how much it can handle and what needs to be done to fix those problems. We reviewed our existing rates and how that was meeting our needs financially, and then we developed a financial model to perform. So we performed a comprehensive analysis of our current and future needs, or what now the buzzword is a revenue sufficiency model. We developed alternatives and options going forward, and that's what we presented to the City Council 4 weeks ago. In the Stormwater Master Plan, we presented to the Council on Committee of the Whole on February 5th of 2019, and then the master plan was adopted in February. And since then, we've been working on this going through the rates and making sure that we got all of the information and did everything well. The rate study we visited with you on August 27th, and so what you have before you tonight is the recommendation or the adoption of the chosen option. So why is this necessary? Well, we get the growing costs due to the increased operating expenses that we have. Equipment's really expensive to not just to maintain, but to purchase to begin with. But then capital improvements, and I think we shared that with you, that just from last year, from 2018 to 2019, there was a 30% increase in construction costs, which is just enormous when it comes to projects that are $1 million or more. It goes from $1 million to $1.3 million really quick. So, and then increased stormwater regulations, and these are unfunded mandates that we are required to meet, and so that's another reason for doing this. So the objectives of our study were to ensure that we had sufficient revenues to cover all of our expenses, to meet our current debt obligations. We have 2 current bonds paying for projects that have been constructed, and then to keep at least 180 days cash on hand, and then minimize the impacts to existing ratepayers and establish fees that are easy to implement as well as understand and administer. So just real quickly, went through that already. So these are just some, one more. These are just some of the projects and pieces of equipment over the next, this is just a 5-year look. Now, if we looked at a 15 to 20-year look is what we actually put together, and it would scare you just the number. So we're doing it on a 5-year plan, so, and trying to be as reasonable as we can. And then last of all is the option. Option 1, or the preferred option, was in beginning in fiscal year 2021 to have a dollar increase per ERU or $12 a year. And then after that, beginning in fiscal year 2022 to 2025, to increase an additional 65 cents per year to.
Danny, can you go back to that previous graph?
Maybe.
Okay. Thanks, Melinda.
That one, okay.
What is it? Do you know off the top of your head what the total is of those projects?
Of these right here, I don't have.
If not
that
those,
in
what
front
is
of
it
me.
for everything?
For right here, we're probably close to $4 to $5 million.
So half of that is that 725 East repair.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, and that particular one is in year 5 of this plan. And we're looking, and in the meantime, we're looking at other options. And so we may come up with an alternative to that, but we're looking at worst case scenarios right now. If we do the project as the model shows that we need to, that's what it would cost us.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so this is what it would look like for 20 in 2020. So our current fiscal year, for $4.65 a month per ERU, and so in 2021 it will go to $5.65, and then it will continue to $6.30, and then on the 5th year we'll be at $8.25. And just kind of give you an indication of where we're at in comparison to other cities, and we put this slide together, and you can see the Murray's current rate. We're 3rd to the lowest of all of the communities close by, and even at the 565, we're nowhere near even midpoint. Midpoint of average of all of these is about $7.40. So even in our 5th year, we're just barely over that. So we think that we're trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can and still meet our needs and requirements going forward. In the previous slide, we show having to do a bond in 2025, and if we can find savings in between now and then, we may not have to do that. We may just be able to do it with the cash that we have on hand. But just in case, the financial model shows that we will probably need to do that if we build that $2.5 million project. So I'm glad to answer any questions if you have any at this point in time. But what you have before us is the ordinance in your package.
I have a question.
Okay.
I have a question. It's probably obvious, but I'm not sure. What is an ERU?
Everybody asks that, so I should have said that, but to begin with, it's equivalent residential unit. So what we do is we've determined the average household, average property is going to give us so much runoff. And then we base all ERUs on that same number, on that same square footage that is developed. And then we apply it to every single home and then every single business related to that as well. So any hard surfaces that are there, that's what we're talking about. So every square foot of hard surface, it equals so many square feet equals an ERU. So the mall, for example, would be, or IHC, these big parking lots, churches, all of these would all go up per every single ERU that they're being charged for now.
Okay, so even those that are tax exempt or nonprofit, they still pay ERUs then, right?
I believe so.
Okay, so it's a very fair way
It is.
to make that determination. Okay,
Right.
that's what I was. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
I've got a comment. Thank God we don't live in Pleasant Grove.
It was a little high there, wasn't it? Thank you.
All right, I'll open this up to public comment. Does anyone wish the same rules apply as we had in citizen comments? Does anyone from the public wish to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment and bring it back to the council. Are there any questions? Okay, I'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve an ordinance amending section 13.48.050 of the Murray City Municipal Code relating to stormwater utility fees.
I'll second that.
Having been moved and seconded, Jennifer?
Aye.
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 Aye. Excuse me. Number 2, consider an ordinance relating to land use amendments of the general plan for commercial development and general office or to professional office for a property located at 5920 South Fashion Boulevard, Murray City, Utah. Melinda Greenwood presenting. Roderick Enterprises applicant.
Good evening. We are here tonight to discuss the general plan amendment from office to professional office for 5920 Fashion Boulevard. I believe we do have a member, or the applicant, is Ben Wheats here tonight? Okay, I thought we would have a member from the applicant here, but this item was actually, we had, was it the September 5th council meeting? We approved a zone map amendment. Typically, we have these two items combined, but we had an oddity that night, and we didn't get the proper notice sent out to the residents, the property owners nearby, and then also on the meeting agenda. So we are here tonight going over that general plan amendment that was not done that evening. So this is just an aerial view of the property. And this shows, right now, this is the future land use map. It shows that it will be moved to professional, or the future land use is the professional office zone. We also have here so the property was rezoned, so this does show the rezone already here, that it's been rezoned. So we're kind of doing this backwards, where we're having the general plan amendment after the fact, so. So we did have, this was sent to the Planning Commission. They had their public hearing. They forwarded a positive recommendation to the City Council. And the findings, we have determined that this fits within the general plan goals and guidelines. And let's see. So, and especially since the rezone was already put into place, we recommend that the City Council pass the general plan amendment and move this from, it was commercial development and general office, and to rezone it to professional office. So if there's any questions, I will try and answer those, or again, I don't know if there's, if the applicant's here. Oh. So the zone allows for professional office buildings, and the applicant's intent was to, after the rezone and the general plan amendment, to construct an office building.
Can you please wait till the public comment, and you can come up and ask your question and be on the record? The question was what we're going to put up there, but this is just dealing with the master plan.
Yeah, so this is for the zoning and the use of the property. This is not specific to an actual project, so that use will come later, but the zone allows for general office buildings.
Melinda, will that be in another meeting for the planning and zoning?
Yes, there will be a public hearing held for a conditional use permit, as all new buildings in the professional office zone.
So when they decide what they're going to do, then they come before the planning and zoning?
Yeah,
Okay.
so when the applicant submits an actual project, we'll have another public opportunity for public hearing to look at the specific project and not just the zoning and the uses of the property.
All right, thank you.
Any questions for Belinda? Okay, thank you. And the applicant isn't here, I assume? Okay, we'll open to public comment. If you'd like to come up and speak, we need to have it on the microphone so we can record it. I see none. We'll close the public comment, bring it back to the council. Any other questions? Okay, I'm open to a motion.
I will move that we approve the ordinance relating to land use, which amends the general plan from commercial development and general office to professional office for the property located at 5920 South Fashion Boulevard.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Jennifer?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, next on the agenda, consider an ordinance, and I'll probably have to take a drink in the middle of this one. Amending sections 17-146-020, 17-146-030, 17-146-040, 17-146-050, 17-146-080, 17-146-090. I'm not through yet. 17-146-110, 17-146-120 of the Murray City Municipal Code relating to mixed-use zoning district. Melinda.
So last time, I turned the time over to Jared Hall and stated that he was the resident expert, and he was very happy with that. he was going to go home and tell his wife that he was the expert. So I'm going to do the same thing again tonight. But many thanks to Jared and my staff who have worked hard on amending this ordinance, as well as the attorney's office who has reviewed this for us. He is kind of the workhorse behind all this, so I'll let him give you the details.
Thanks. I did actually go home last time and mention to my wife that I was referred to as an expert to zero effect, just for so you know. This is not working right. Hang on 1 second. I'll get it right in 1 second. I have to do it my way or I can't make it work. Okay, so this is the mixed-use zone. And as Councilman Cox read off, it affects many different kind of subsections in that zone. The first one of them is definitions. It's kind of like when you start a simple remodeling project on your house and it kind of balloons and escalates into more stuff. It happens that way. We start with definitions. We had to based on the different things that we were doing, making changes to this zone to kind of update it and make it more user-friendly, make it more development-friendly so that we could get some things going and make it more compatible with different areas of the city instead of just around the train station. One of the things that we found that we first needed to do was define transit stations. We have 3 different transit stations in the city at Fashion Place West, where the rail comes through and makes stops. Fashion Place West, Murray Central, and Murray North, that everyone refers to as Fireclay. So we define those stations. Horizontal mixed use versus vertical mixed use we'll get into first, actually, in the slides here. We have to define those kinds of things. And then also public streets and private streets, as was mentioned in the committee of the whole. When we talked about this, we've thrown those definitions in as well. So those definitions for streets actually come right from our subdivision ordinance in Title 16. So we wanted to be consistent throughout, so we placed those there. As I mentioned, we wanted to look at vertical mixed use versus horizontal mixed use. So in this first slide, this is a picture of vertical mixed use. A mixed use development and a mixed use zone is kind of created to enable a mixed use development. Mixed use development is any development where there are commercial uses and residential uses in the same building or on the same project. You have to subdefine them as vertical and horizontal, because in a vertical mixed use development, that's what people typically picture: commercial development on that main floor and then residential units up above. In a horizontal mixed use development, as pictured kind of here, you have a large area of commercial development, office and retail and some entertainment, and then a section of housing development that goes with it, but it's not over that commercial development, it's in the same project. So horizontal mixed use is when there's multiple components, but they're not contained in the same buildings necessarily. So we defined those 2 things that way. Another thing that we did as a part of this update was to propose that we implement a density grading sort of plan. We, in the mixed-use zone prior to this, there have been no caps on density. It's simply controlled by the factors of the site, how much you can park, how easy it is to get traffic in and out, that kind of thing. So we've proposed that within a quarter mile of a transit area, you see these are the 3 transit stations: Fashion Place West, Murray Central, and Murray North. Within 1/4 mile, that's the 100 units per acre that we would typically see. That's a pretty, I don't want to say industry standard is the wrong term, but we say it all the time for planners. That's sort of industry standard. You're not going to want to be able to handle 100 units per acre outside of that quarter mile of a transit area. You can't get, it starts to impact traffic and parking too much. Half-mile radius, we suggest that drop down to 80 units per acre as a maximum density. The 1 mile radius, that should drop down to 50 units per acre, and outside of 1 mile, if there is a mixed-use zone and a mixed-use development implemented, it ought not have a density greater than 40 units per acre. That's what we've suggested thus far. This next slide is just to show you right around the transit station, that 100 units per acre would be only for those projects located really with direct adjacency or immediate adjacency to that station. Outside of that, it starts to drop back in terms of density. We talked about vertical mixed use a little bit, and one of the reasons that we wanted to define vertical mixed use and horizontal mixed use is that we hadn't done that previously, and so it had impacted our ability to sort of anticipate development and how that would work. One of the other factors that we changed in relation to both of those things is that our ground floor commercial requirements were pretty restrictive. We couldn't find another requirement as restrictive anywhere in the country, really, as we looked through different codes. 75% of the ground floor of any residential building has to be commercial under the current code. What we've proposed is that we redefine that slightly to say that 75% of the ground floor for a depth of 40 feet, where it faces a public or private street, needs to be commercial. Where you don't have street frontage on a deep property, it's difficult to produce that viable commercial space. I'm going to show you that a little better in the next slide, but that allows us to do a couple of things. The rest of the depth of that building can be used for some parking, so you get this tuck under parking like this that really helps projects, and you have additional things you can do. If you have a really deep property, like in this next slide, for example, here, this is an example actually of right here on the right is an example of a horizontal mixed-use property, but we can use it to talk about that depth problem too. You can see how long and deep the property is. If this were a big apartment block or something, it would be really tough to do a ground floor commercial that wasn't facing that public street. You really need that public street frontage for that to be successful. So what they did in this case was propose an office building out where the street is and then the residential units behind. This is on 4800 South. This is the new office building that's going up there on the north side of the road. When we look at the requirements for commercial for horizontal mixed-use developments, we proposed that we take an area like this, where the frontage of this project is, we would take this frontage area for a depth of 40 feet, 75% of that frontage, calculate that square footage, and require that much commercial development for the project. So on these long, deep projects, it lets us get the property redeveloped. It adds new housing. That's a good thing for everybody that's in that area. For all the residential and the retail uses in that area, it brings that all up. But it lets us get that requirement of commercial out front as well. Where we do that kind of thing, and this is an example on the left, actually, of how that would pencil out for an undeveloped piece of property or an underdeveloped piece of property. You'd wind up on this particular piece where the Siegel Lilly School is, near 500 West and 4800 South, with about 8,700 square feet of commercial required. And they could put that in a mixed-use environment. Horizontally, they could build one building and then residential units, as long as they build that 8,700 square feet. Along with that, for larger developments, 5 acres and more, whether they're vertical mixed use or horizontal mixed use, and any development that's horizontal mixed use, we've recommended implementing a master site plan be required. That's to control and make sure that if the initial developer fails and goes away, there's a document tied to that, a master site plan that dictates how that's developed, so we don't lose that potential commercial to easier things to do. That commercial development, that master site plan will have 3 components that are sort of stated to guide the way that looks and make sure it's a walkable development, a nice development, a livable area. The building orientation, the central feature, something that ties the project together and provides a nice amenity, and then open spaces, outdoor spaces that really make those projects work. One of the purposes of having a mixed-use development is that it's more compact, so you get an ability to do more amenities and more open spaces within the same project, making it a nice area to shop, to live in, et cetera. Another thing that we've done is modified or recommended making some modifications to the parking. These are pretty basic, but the main part of it is that when we have parking minimums that are required at any time in the current code that you're parking more than 110% of those minimums. We don't cap it absolutely, but if you're parking more than 110% of what we require as a minimum, you can't do that unless it's in a parking structure or within the envelope of the building. Working with some developers and looking at the way that this pencils out for them, we wanted to propose raising that to 125%. Over 125%, they're still going to have to put it inside of a structure, but that might just make the difference for some smaller developments that can't afford that structured parking and that want to provide it. Building setbacks and access improvements, we've just kind of, we've added a little bit of space for people to be able to set their buildings back a little further. One of the other tenets of mixed-use developments, or one of the things you see commonly, is that we try to pull those buildings out to the street. So we measure the setbacks differently than we do in other zones. We measure them from the back of the curb instead of from the property line. So the property lines are usually at the back of the sidewalk. But in mixed-use developments, you tend to see that area that's a sidewalk, that's part of the public right-of-way, that blurs a little bit with the private land. And so we just measure those setbacks from the curbs instead. So in this diagram, we wanted to make a diagram, and Zach from our office produced this, so we can insert that in the code and make it more understandable for developers so they know exactly what we're talking about when we say private development or private setback, as opposed to the required right-of-way improvements that go in. The mixed-use zone has some nice right-of-way improvements that are required, 7 feet sidewalk or 7-foot park strips and 8-foot sidewalks. I have a couple of examples of those. This is actually in the fire clear area on the left, so you can see the buildings are out closer to the street. This is in San Francisco, but the same kind of thing exists. We measure that setback for the building from the back of the curb like this to the building front. And all of this area in between, in this case, is actually public realm. This is part of the public right-of-way, and your building is actually right out on it. So we measure those setbacks a little differently. We actually allow a little more space in that, up to another 5 or 10 feet, between 5 and 10 more feet, so that if we need to make ADA ramps or things like that more accessible, offloading spaces for the curbs, we can do that a little more easily. These are pictures that are actually developments in our mixed-use zone currently. We haven't changed those. We call them access improvements, that park strip and sidewalk requirements. Those are still 7 and 8 feet. And this is the EMI building on Vine Street. So you see they have a nice park strip area and that nice wide sidewalk. And then this is just around the corner, actually, in this photo, the Murray School District building, also developed in the mixed-use zone. So those are our recommendations. We did make several findings with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission forwarded a recommendation for approval. We think this will help us facilitate good quality development. It redefines a few things and really just fills in some gaps and makes development more possible with those changes to the ground floor commercial requirements. And so we are recommending that the council approve it tonight based on those findings and the Planning Commission's recommendation. You have any questions for staff at this point?
Could you go over that one more time?
Yeah, you bet. I will just run it right
Man,
through
you
again.
were good. I'm impressed how
Start
much
over.
you covered it. Yeah, you covered it well.
You bet.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Jerry.
Okay, no more questions. I'll look for a motion. Oh, wait, we better have public comment, yeah. I'm getting ahead of myself. Is there anybody here? I'll open the public comment. Is there anybody here like to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the council now. I'm looking for a motion. Come on, somebody get
I'll,
giddy.
I'll make a motion to adopt an ordinance amending section 17.146.020 through 17.146.120 of the Murray City Municipal Code related to the mixed-use zoning district.
I'll second that.
Very good, Dave.
Thank you.
Having been moved and seconded, Jennifer?
Aye.
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 You already did the heavy lifting on that, so I just figured it's on the record.
There you go. Consider, last on the agenda is consider an ordinance amending Murray City Standard Land Use Code, enacting Chapter 17.43 of the Murray City Municipal Code governing cannabis production, establishments, and medical cannabis pharmacies, and amending Section 17.88.020, 1792.020, 17144.020, 17.148.020, 17.152.020, 17.156.020, 17.160.020, 17.173.020, and 17.174.020, identifying cannabis production establishments and medical cannabis pharmacies as permitted uses in specific zoning districts. Melinda.
So pretty much we need a bottle of water for each of our agenda items.
Yeah, there you go.
So this has been a big topic of discussion over the last few months, especially at the state level. Last year, the state, well, I guess actually the year prior, voters voted in a medical cannabis bill, and last year, the state, or earlier this year, the state made changes to that statute, and then they recently made changes again in a special session that was held on September 17th. So we have been through a few different renditions of this ordinance that's before you this evening, in keeping with the state's changes that they have made. So let me just go through this. One of the things that we need to do with how our land use code is structured is add in codes for the standard land use code. We have a separate document that defines all the different types of uses within properties, and we did not have a designation for cannabis production establishments, nor did we have ones for medical cannabis pharmacies. So one of the main items in this ordinance amendment is adding those two into the standard land use code. Next, I want to talk about the cannabis production establishments. Earlier in the committee of the whole, GL went over some of the changes that the state has made. But essentially, the state has required that cities allow cannabis production establishments as a permitted use in industrial zones or in agricultural zones. So the previous rendition and the one that the Planning Commission had seen had that listed as recommended as a conditional use, but we can no longer have that as designated as a permitted use. And another thing I just want to point out, and I'll have some maps that'll kind of give you a little bit of an idea of this, but the state has come out with distance requirements and says that the production facilities may not be located within 1,000 feet of a community location or within 600 feet of a zone that's primarily residential. So that is what this next slide is about. We've also entered into our ordinance on the cannabis production and cannabis pharmacies. We have said, hey, these are all of the zones within Murray City that are primarily residential. So the production facilities and the pharmacy facilities would not be able to be located within 600 feet of any one of these zones, since they are primarily residential. So that's where you got all of those numbers that Councilmember Cox read over earlier with the different zone designations. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the cannabis pharmacies. These were always intended as a permitted use within any zone except for those that are primarily residential. We went over those on the last slide. And then the state did change some of the distance requirements, and so just as an FYI, the state allows cannabis production pharmacies within 600 feet of a community location, and then they need to be at least 200 feet within a primarily residential zone. So we had our GIS division put together a map that gives us a fairly good indication of where these establishments could potentially be located. I do want to point out that the maps are based on a radius distance from the zone of the property or the use of the property. They are not based on an actual pedestrian route. So this is a fairly accurate depiction, but we'll have to look at each one on a case specific to see whether or not they actually are allowed based on the requirements that the state has put in place. So this just shows the cannabis production area and kind of shows there's a few locations. This cream color up here is where those locations would be allowed. So up in the north end of the city where we have our manufacturing zone, and then there's a smaller pocket down on the south end of the city. And then here is a map of the pharmacy areas. It's kind of similar. Again, we're looking at that location where there's no color, where it's just kind of cream. So you can see the distance requirements that the state has put in place. It is a pretty big limiting factor on where these can be located. So the findings we've gone through, we found that this is compliant with state code. And they are consistent with the purpose of our current land use code. And then this was heard again by the Planning Commission in, was it July, or was it August? So this was heard in August. They did forward a positive recommendation. Again, a different version of the ordinance is before you tonight, but that's based on the changes that the state legislature made a few weeks ago. So those things that were in the code that was presented to the Planning Commission essentially were removed, and we're left with this proposal of the ordinance that is in full compliance with the state the changes that the state just put into place. So With that, our recommendation is that you adopt the ordinance as proposed this evening, and if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them, or GL may be able to answer some too.
Are there any questions? Okay, I'll open it up for public hearing. Does anybody wish to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing and bring it back to the council for a motion.
I'll move that we approve the ordinance amending the Murray City Standard Land Use Code, enacting Chapter 17.43 of the Murray City Municipal Code governing cannabis production establishments and medical cannabis pharmacies, and amending sections, and I'm just going to refer to the sections that Councilmember Cox read at the beginning.
Do we have a second?
Is that okay, GL? Or do you want us to read through the whole thing?
It's on the record.
Okay.
I'll second.
Having been moved and seconded, Jennifer?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, there are no business items, and that brings us to the mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Starting today, 300 West is closed at 5670 South for installation of a storm drain. This is part of that Utana storm drain project. So this will be a hard closure. There'll be no through traffic allowed. So those of you who still like to refer to that as the bridge to nowhere, for the next 3 weeks, it is going nowhere. So it's scheduled to reopen on October 23rd. Secondly, just a heads up to prepare for the beard season. As you know, each year the officers, our police officers, are allowed to grow their beards out. This started out as Movember, which was to raise awareness for men's health issues. It was extended last year through December, and has been extended by the chief this year for October, November, and December. But for each month that the officers are allowed to wear their beard, and it's not just to look like GL, although that's what some of them have indicated that they like, but it's in exchange for a charitable donation to the Victims Advocate Emergency Fund, so it's for a very good cause. So expect to see our unshaven officers through the end of the year anyway. Thirdly, I just want to make a note of our annual pumpkin race scheduled for Monday, October 14th. If you've ever been to the pumpkin race in Murray Park, it's really a fun event. It's on the hill there behind or I should say just west of the rec center, October 14th at 6 p.m. At the library, October is Amnesty Month. Patrons with unpaid for previously lost items in good condition can bring them back to the library and have their fines and replacement costs removed from their account and get back in good standing with the library. So just wanted to make the public aware of that. And finally, our new fire engine that has been being built for the past almost year is scheduled to arrive tomorrow. It'll take a few weeks for all the equipment to be installed on it and tested and put in service, but it will be in town tomorrow. So I know Chief Harris is very excited about that. So, unless you have questions, that's my report.
Any questions for the mayor? All right, thank you, Mayor. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Dale. Good job.
You bet, buddy.